Democratic voters who are supporting Bernie Sanders are furious. They're outraged that this man is losing. We've heard accusations of hard rigging. The primary's been rigged. The votes have been changed. The exit polls don't match the turnout. And now we are seeing for the second day, hashtag #DemExit, which means Democrat exit. We saw this occur back in the last election cycle as progressive Democrats vow to quit the Democratic Party, and they refuse to support the nominee. According to exit polls, around 19% of Bernie Sanders supporters are saying they will not support Joe Biden. What's interesting about this is that in the last election cycle, 12 to 18% of Bernie Sanders supporters actually voted for Donald Trump. So I have to wonder, will we see a massive contingent of Bernie or bust, or dare I say, Bernie or Trump voters severely hurting Joe Biden? Now, there's other stuff coming out of these exit polls that are fascinating as well. People keep saying that Bernie Sanders is the feminist candidate, he's the leftist candidate, he's the progressive, that he's building a coalition of young people, minorities, and women, and it turns out that is not true. The exit polls show us that Joe Biden is winning among minorities as well as women, and Bernie Sanders actually has lower support among white men and college-educated white men than he did in 2016. More people are coming out to support Joe Biden, which is overshadowing the youth vote as well. Bernie Sanders is not mustering this progressive coalition. So I take it with a grain of salt when these people say they're Democrats and they're quitting. Because as some people have pointed out, if you're planning to quit and you're not going to support the nominee allowing Trump to win, you were never a Democrat in the first place. And there you go. Because Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. He's independent. So this makes sense. But I will leave it at there are still many people who are Democrats who don't like the idea of creepy, sleepy Joe being the nominee. I mean, the dude doesn't know where he is, but I'll tell you what, it's a rock and a hard place for Democrats right now. What are you going to choose? 78-year-old socialist who just had a heart attack? Or creepy Joe Biden who doesn't know where he is? They're actually reducing the amount of time he's seen in public because he gaffes and just misstates things so often. The dude can't talk straight. You think he's going to be able to go up against Donald Trump? I'm sorry, I think you're nuts. But now they've actually changed the debate rules. We'll see what happens come, I believe it's on Sunday, where what they were reporting before is that Joe Biden will get to sit down for this one, which I got to say, man, it is not good news for Democrats. So let's do this. Let's read why these Democrats are saying they will quit the party and why many others are saying they will write in Bernie Sanders if it ends up being Joe Biden. Before we get started, however, head over to timcast.com/donate. If you'd like to support my work, there's several ways you can give, but the best thing you can do, share this video if for any other reason, just to support my channel. But I really do sincerely hope we can break some echo chambers. I'm not entirely confident, but we can try, right? The other thing I'll say is many of you haven't subscribed to my channel. So if you do like my content and want to make sure you stay up to date, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, because YouTube is no longer, well, they're reducing the amount of recommendations they give to my channel, meaning if you're not subscribed, you probably won't see this content in the future. So make sure you stay up. But let's read from Newsweek. This is from yesterday. As Michigan votes, Dem exit trends with Sanders supporters threatening to leave the Democratic Party if Biden wins the nomination. They say it comes as voters in so-called Super Tuesday 2 states headed to the polls after Biden dealt a humbling blow to Sanders' campaign in the Super Tuesday voting contest last week. The Vermont senator will need a good showing tonight to regain momentum for his campaign. Well, as we now know, guess what? Joe Biden crushed Bernie Sanders. So here's what we ended up seeing, and I'll move to the more relevant story from today. This person tweeted, "If Joe Biden gets the nomination, I will Dem exit. Who will join me?" This person says, "I am leaving the Democratic Party if they nominate Biden. The moderate wing of the party cannot expect the progressives to jump behind any candidate they nominate. I swear I will not vote for Biden. I promise I will not vote for Biden." This person says, "Most Bernie supporters were very clear from the start. Bernie is our compromise Democrat. You insist on Hillary on steroids, Biden, and now you want to whine. Nah, have the courage of your convictions." So these people are, I find this interesting. Bernie Sanders' coalition tends to be young people, and they're effectively holding the Democratic Party hostage. Over on the Republican side, Republicans are unified behind Donald Trump. They basically are just, hey, whatever Trump says. Now, there has been some, there have been some criticisms in the past, foreign policy, for instance, and some current modern issues. But for the most part, Republicans all agree. Now, they don't completely agree, but the one thing they do agree on is letting Donald Trump take the reins and run the show. Over on the Democratic side, it looks like two different parties with one group of around 19%. Check this out. Let me show you these stats. Democratic primary voters committed to voting for the Democratic nominee in November. And among Sanders voters, only 81% were willing to commit. And according to CNN, they say 19% of Sanders voters in Michigan say they will not vote for the Democratic nominee, regardless of who it is in the election for president this November via CNN exit polls. I think what he means to say is if it's Sanders voters. If Bernie Sanders doesn't get the nomination, these people will not vote for the Democratic Party. And I find it funny. I can respect it to a certain degree, right? He's the person you want. You won't vote for anyone else. All right, right on. But clearly, I think it's a fair argument to say they're actually, to an extent, okay with Donald Trump as being the president. What a lot of these more mainstream Democrats don't realize, these establishment types, these resistance types, is that to most of the Bernie Sanders supporters, Biden and Trump are almost no different. Now, to Trump supporters view them both as completely different. In fact, in one story from Town Hall, they say, no, Joe Biden is not a moderate Democrat. So I do find it interesting that Republicans view Joe Biden as a leftist, Bernie as super far left. But to the progressives, Joe Biden and Trump are almost the exact same thing. I'm going to have to say right now, I think to a certain extent, based on what the progressives they care about, I mean, Joe Biden, as part of the Obama administration, Obama was called the deporter in chief. So yeah, Bernie Sanders is relatively close to Trump based on how far away the far left is, right? So keep that in mind. Joe Biden may not be a centrist. I love how they call him a centrist. He's not. But Bernie and the progressives and the far left, they're so far left when they look down this, look to the right, they see Joe Biden and Trump, close to each other, whereas Bernie is ridiculously far away. Now, of course, many of these people who are threatening to quit the Democratic Party, guess what? They're probably real people because we saw the exact same thing in 2016. But the resistance, anti-Trump, pro-Biden people can't accept it. It must be Russia. Of course. Check out this tweet. This is from Miss Krasenstein. You remember the Krasensteins. Warning. All of these are GOP and Russian hashtags. Oh, you people. Don't buy into it. They're trying to prevent Bernie Sanders from supporting Joe Biden so that Trump wins an election he has no chance in. Hashtag bye-bye Bernie, bye-bye Biden, right in Bernie, Biden loses to Trump. Let me tell you something. Progressives don't want Joe Biden. And come on, man, you got to recognize that there are regular people who aren't far left who also don't want Joe Biden. Like, this dude can't speak. He doesn't know where he is at the time. But no, they're going to claim it's Russia and Republicans. And this is the amazing problem I have seen with the Democrats as to why they won't win. On one side, you have the resistance anti-Trump at all costs, and they refuse to accept that there are progressives who disagree with them and say Russia, 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 Tulsi Gabbard, Russia, Jill Stein, Russia, and all these people complaining who are threatening to quit the party, Russia. Meanwhile, the progressives are also refusing to compromise. They say Bernie Sanders is the compromise, but Bernie Sanders is proposing one of the most radical positions in the world on healthcare, abolishing private health insurance within 4 years. My understanding is that most countries, especially in Europe, they have supplemental private insurance, so that seems really extreme. You have two factions that are essentially under the same umbrella, though they don't agree on most things, and they refuse to compromise, but they also refuse to leave their bubble. So they just end up thinking they're the only ones who are correct. That's the problem. The Democratic Party is basically like 2 or 3 different parties that don't agree with each other and can't unify around a candidate because Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. He's independent. So I will take it with a grain of salt when people say they're going to quit the party. But I want to show you this data. This is a story from this month, and they say, well, something interesting. Such trolling, referring to Trump, may have paid off somewhat in 2016. 12% of voters who supported Sanders in the Democratic primary wound up voting for Trump over Clinton in the general election. It seems he's once again hoping that playing up the divide could nab him voters from people who backed Sanders in the primary. But it is unclear if those 2016 defectors were adamantly pro-Sanders or simply anti-Clinton. The white working class voters who formed part of the foundation of Sanders' 2016 run have appeared to join Biden's coalition this time around. Trump's efforts to pull in their support then may be in vain. It's actually a really good point. People absolutely hated Hillary Clinton. And I'll tell you what, that's a statement almost everyone's going to agree with. Yeah, we get it, man. Hillary was a terrible, terrible candidate. She was snide, elitist, and she had this air of just, she was just very narcissistic and arrogant about how smart. It was the worst kind of attitude to have. People just didn't like it. Well, Joe Biden comes around and the guy comes off as kind of goofy, kind of silly, to a lot of people kind of creepy, but he is no Hillary Clinton. Now, here's the next big trend. This story from Breitbart I find absolutely fascinating. Right in Bernie trends on Twitter as Bernie Sanders fans struggle with losses. Here's what's fascinating. As these Democratic voters vow to quit the party, they're vowing to write in Bernie Sanders, which is absolutely going to be a spoiler and help Donald Trump. I don't like this, this system, more, like most people, we complain about spoiler campaigns and things like that. It really does happen. But I think you should always vote based on principle. So you know what I will say to these people who want to write in Bernie or quit the Democratic Party? You know what, man? I respect it. I personally would only vote for the person I want. And I said, if it came down to like Andrew Yang, though Andrew Yang now recently endorsed Biden, I roll. I'd be interested in voting for Yang, not because I thought he was going to win, but because I thought he was the best person to debate Trump and get these ideas out there. And if it wasn't him, I'm out. And around 42% of Yang supporters said something similar. So I'm not interested in voting for any of these people. I don't care. I guess for the most part, I'm kind of ambivalent. If I see, actually, I think Bernie has a lot of really bad ideas. But for the most part, I don't think, people don't seem to realize that a president isn't going to bring about this dramatic change they think. I mean, Trump has done a lot of things as leader of the executive branch. Biden did many things, but for the most part, the laws in this country, everything, it changes gradually, and politics is downstream from culture. So I'm not super concerned for the most part. But I'll tell you what, you're not going to get me out of my seat to go and vote for any of these people. For the people who truly do support Bernie and want to see him win, writing him in, I actually find that respectable. I don't like the idea that it's the two parties or else, but I certainly think that if 19% of Bernie Sanders voters leave and refuse to support Biden, Biden will not be able to muster the count needed to defeat Donald Trump. One of the things we've seen, so this is a story we have recently. I'll just go over this very quickly. Sanders vows to carry on. We get it. But one of the most fascinating things I've seen so far comes from BuzzFeed. Bernie Sanders has one of the same problems Jesse Jackson did in 1988. The coalition isn't big enough. And there is a bunch to break down here. But the first and most fascinating thing is that you know that Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. He's been independent. He's a socialist. He caucuses with Democrats, but he is not a Democrat. And Democrats have been offended by this for a long time. Bernie, in my opinion, seems to know his only path towards high office, higher profile office, is to run as a Democrat because Republicans are not going to go anywhere near his progressivism or socialism. In 1988, when he was involved in the Jesse Jackson campaign, check this out. BuzzFeed links to this. Here's a story. They say, let me see where we can figure it out. One voter, Helen Malloy, yelled from the back of the auditorium, "We want unity among ourselves, not with a group of outsiders." Several minutes later, she approached Mayor Sanders as he was returning to his seat after casting his vote and slapped him on the cheek. The mayor, who at first appeared to think the woman was about to greet him, looked stunned. "I don't think that was very nice," he said. Mr. Jackson had no paid staff in Vermont for either of the primaries, blah, blah, blah. Bernie Sanders actually got slapped in the face by a Democrat who was mad. Presumably, I think that's what would happen. I want to make sure this is clear. They say in 1988 at the Michigan caucus, after winning across, Michael Dukakis, the pragmatic, I can win liberal, crushed Jesse Jackson. But they go on to say that a woman shouted in response, or actually, let me start over. A few weeks after the Wisconsin primary in Burlington, the city's mayor, Bernie Sanders, caucused for Jackson despite not being a member of the party. "I resent intruders who would undermine and destroy the Democratic Party," announced one resident from the podium. A woman shouted in response from the back, "We want unity among ourselves, now the group of outsiders." She walked up to Sanders and she slapped him in the face. Bernie Sanders does not represent Democrats. Now, Joe Biden's got an uphill battle, too, because he's drifted as well, trying to grab onto these progressive voters, and it's turning people into conservatives. But let's talk about this coalition that's supposed to exist. I told you about George McGovern in a previous video I did a couple weeks ago. McGovern was supposed to be this, at least according to the stories I've read. I was not alive at the time. He was supposed to be a progressive. He was going to be the coalition candidate, bringing together, college-educated voters and minorities and women to defeat Richard Nixon. And this is what happened. McGovern won only Massachusetts and Washington, D.C., and Nixon got 520 electoral votes in a massive, massive defeat. It was epic. This was supposed to be the coalition candidate. Well, I'll tell you what right now. Check this out. Exit polls show Joe Biden primary wins fueled by women and African-American voters. I thought Bernie Sanders was the guy of the minorities and the progressives. Nope, he is not. He's a man of the far left. And man, it is so disproportionate. Check this out. Biden gets boost in Mississippi from African-American voters. In Mississippi, Joe Biden got 84% of the African-American vote. I kid you not. Bernie Sanders with 13%. Are you kidding? And he's supposed to be this. Nah, I'm sorry, man. Bernie Sanders absolutely cannot muster this. Now, over at Newsweek, they say this. Why Bernie Sanders lost Michigan to Joe Biden despite winning the state in 2016. And there's some interesting information here. They say, Sanders eked out a narrow victory in Michigan against Hillary Clinton in 2016. So why did he fail to secure the same outcome in the Mitten state this year? The answer can be found in the exit polls. They showed that younger voters failed to flock to the polls in the same way that the Sanders campaign hoped for. In fact, younger voters accounted for less of the turnout than it did in 2016. His performance among younger voters was overshadowed by that of Biden's ability to win over older voters, who accounted for a larger slice of the overall electorate. Sanders also received less support from white and male voters this time around. Amazing. White male voters gave Bernie less support this time. You want to know why that is? You want to know what my opinion is on why people I know don't like Bernie anymore? Early on in 2016, Bernie seemed to be a rational guy. Then he said on the debate stage, if you're white, you don't know what it's like to be poor. And he lost a lot of people. Since then, Bernie has surrounded himself by these fringe, woke, identitarian leftists. I won't name them, but there's many who are acting as surrogates for Bernie Sanders. What do you think a white male will feel or do when they see these people around Bernie saying these things? They're going to be like, I'm out. You insult me, I'm out. I don't like that. I think you've got crazy beliefs. I am out. So I'm not surprised in the least bit to see that Bernie received less support from white male voters. They say the dismal showing from younger voters is despite claims by Sanders that he has the ability to draw young new voters to the polls. After a similar showing on Super Tuesday this week, surrogates for the self-described Democratic Socialist on Capitol Hill told Newsweek that he needs to broaden his support among the electorate and energize his base to turnout if he hoped to remain a viable candidate. Unfortunately, Bernie Sanders needs votes he's not getting. Joe Biden is dominating. Now, it's fair to say Bernie Sanders has absolutely dominated in the younger generation votes. Here's the thing, though. You're congratulating yourself about winning over a demographic that doesn't actually vote. It's like opening a business and cheering that your business is every seat in your coffee shop is full, but it's people who don't buy anything, they just read books. Like, dude, you're not going to win that way. Your business can't survive that way. Now, this is silly, but I'm going to show it anyway. Already, this dude, Clyburn, is calling for the Democrats to shut the primary down, cancel the debates, and just give it to Joe Biden. Okay, nah, you can't do that. If you want to see absolute chaos in the streets, do that. You can't. Bernie Sanders is down, but let's be honest, he isn't out. He's trailing Biden by around like 80 or so votes, I think. Or actually, I think it's about maybe 60 or 70 delegates. It's very unlikely Bernie wins at this point, but it is a close race. We'll see what Bernie says. He's vowing to fight. He wants to debate Joe Biden. And hey, look, man, Joe Biden one-on-one might get absolutely obliterated. Bernie Sanders might actually pull forward when people realize Joe Biden can't speak. And right now, I think Bernie is right when he says that while he may be losing, while he may be winning on issues and on the youth vote, he's losing on the idea of electability. Bernie Sanders is now hoping that after the debate with Joe Biden, they'll realize Biden is not electable. And I gotta be honest, I don't think either of them are for the most part, but I do think Bernie is more electable than Biden. In electability, it's a silly word, but I'll put it this way. You stick Joe Biden next to Trump and he mutters and mumbles, people are going to be like, I'm not voting for that guy. I don't care what he thinks. And Bernie Sanders will articulate his bad ideas, but at least some people might be like, that's a bad idea. You know, like, hey, that bad idea sounds good to me. If you can't even speak, how can you win? So while Bernie Sanders may have ideas I completely disagree with, and I think he hasn't completely, formed, they're not complete ideas, at least he can say, I'm going to give you health care. People are going to hear that and they're going to say, I understand. Joe Biden's going to say, oh, health care and the re-election of, CRUMBLES. And you're going to be like, I have no idea what that was. And then Joe Biden's going to just mutter incoherently because that's literally what he does. I'm surprised people think that guy's electable. So maybe Bernie gets it. However, 538 disagrees. The latest prediction model from 538 has Joe Biden with a greater than 99% chance of winning. Look, man, this thing has been absolutely bonkers, this prediction model. So I'm not going to pretend like it's legit. But right now, that's what they're predicting. 99 in 100 chance that Joe Biden wins. Maybe that's the case. Bernie Sanders now has around the same chance as Tulsi Gabbard, according to Nate Silver's 538. And over in the Real Clear Politics average, we can see that Joe Biden is polling above 50%, 53.4, the highest he's ever been. As the field consolidates, the moderate votes go to Biden, and it's likely that Biden will take the nomination. But now you might ask, if Bernie or bust happens, Democrat exit occurs, 19% of Sanders voters dip out, will Biden be able to muster the coalition he needs? Well, Biden may be doing better than Bernie. Without those Bernie voters, he might not be able to win. In fact, some of them might flip for Trump just because, spite. Some of them actually might agree with Trump. In which case, can Biden really win? Well, according to Maxine Waters, she said, I don't know if Biden has what it takes to beat Trump. Now, this is a story from Just the News. Typically, I use stories that are rated by NewsGuard, but let's just read what they said. Rep. Maxine Waters, chairwoman of the House Financial Services Committee, said Tuesday she doesn't know if Joe Biden has what it takes to defeat President Trump and declined to share her opinion of the former vice president's fitness for office. Waters was asked if she is supporting Biden or Bernie, and she said, quote, "It's not about who you like," Waters told Just the News on Capitol Hill ahead of Tuesday's presidential primaries. "It's about now watching and understanding who can beat Trump." Asked if Biden could beat Trump, she replied, "I don't know, but we'll see." I gotta say, that's not confidence building. If your own party is unsure if you have what it takes to beat Trump, well, I guess it's better than lying. I gotta be honest. I respect her for saying I don't know, because of course you'll see Pelosi or whoever else argue, we're going to get behind whoever wins the nomination. Oh, please. I mean, yes, technically they probably will, but begrudgingly. And they also do this thing where we absolutely will win. Pelosi has said over and over and over again, we're going to win in November. We're going to win the House, the Senate, and the presidency. We get it. You're just trying to puff people up. No one thinks you're actually going to win. I'll wrap it up with some important context. While we're talking about Joe Biden, dominating in the primaries and Bernie Sanders not mustering coalition support, as well as his supporters vowing to quit, what do we have? With 99% reporting in Michigan, real Donald Trump has 637,000 votes, absolutely crushing previous Republican and Democratic incumbents. By comparison, Obama had 174,000 votes in 2012. I got to say, I think the support for this president, Donald Trump, is through the roof, and the polls are probably not reflecting it. But hey, man, I don't like making predictions. I think Trump's going to win, but we will see. Hubris will be the downfall of Trump supporters if they think they're going to win. I think the data we're seeing from that primary the other day shows us just how much people hate Hillary Clinton. And that's why Bernie can't win, because, hey, Biden is better than both, it would seem. Perhaps that hatred played a role in Donald Trump winning. And now that she's out, Joe Biden might be able to get a little bit more support. I'm not entirely convinced. I think so many people are tired of the woke far left insanity that many people now view themselves as conservative and are happily getting behind Trump. But we will see in November, won't we? I'm not going to tell you what to do or believe, but I will say hubris is the downfall of the Trump supporters, because just like Hillary Clinton thought she couldn't lose, the Trump supporters, if they think they're invincible, that's when they're going to get a rude awakening. For the time being, they have some good things, some things that are good for them. The fact that 19% of Bernie's voters are out, don't want to vote for Biden, shows Trump might not actually need to try that hard. With record turnout, massive rallies, it really does seem like Trump will landslide. But I guess we'll find out in November. So stick around. Next segment will be up at 6 p.m. youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you all then.